be hiding in that deck, but I think all the cards in that hand looked pretty typical of Roaring Moon. It's just they get the tip off of knowing exactly what deck David is playing, as it was certainly telling. And sometimes having that information going into game one can be crucial. Knowing what you're playing against, both players are probably going to want to choose to go second, right, to attempt to get that first aggressive kind of primary attack.
Oh yeah.
So now that Gilles knows that David is going to be also playing Roaring Moon, if they win the coin flip, they know to choose second.
Yeah, I wonder if they did know about that already. There it is, Polytoad. Hello.
It's part of the sitting cutie range. He is sitting very cutely.
I mean, that looks a little bit like Shay's Krogunk from earlier.
Oh no, I don't want to call him Stinky Bear, please no.
But of course, we'll be seeing the game kick it off here, as there's the prizes. Ooh, two very important consistency cards on one side, and of course some important attackers on the other. It could affect the game. Two Roaring Moon in the prizes for Gilles, and then Greninja and Luminion in the prizes for David.
And it looks like we're kicking off. Gilles going first.
Oh wow, so just going to be playing out that first hand, making sure they've got all the things needed to discard.
Yeah, enough cards in the hand, right? Here we go. The first draw for turn is another Darkness Energy. The hand looks a little bit questionable, but not the worst. It could be a lot worse, but I'm not feeling great about it, if I'm honest.
They will be able to thin out lots of good cards, but at this point they're just checking to see what's available, and of course finding out those two Roaring Moon a prize will be huge. There are 4 in the deck, so probably only needs 2 for now, and we'll hopefully get the last one off the prizes, but it's definitely something to think about. And as you mentioned, seeing the different types here of what we're seeing. So for Gilles, we're seeing the pure dark energy build, and on the other side David is playing the 2 water energy to be able to integrate the Greninja into the play. So we mentioned some of the differences that can add. You mentioned the Greninja being a good way to finish off a Roaring Moon that has damaged itself.
Yeah, I think it's a really lovely addition. Being able to kind of put that upon your opponent and put up that pressure is huge. However, another kind of problem with that, in a sense, is that Mew can also copy Greninja's attacks. So Gilles does have a way of utilizing Greninja in a different way without having to have the water energy at all. So they can still make that happen.
That would be very cheeky as well.
It would.
We might see that later on. But yeah, there is some disruption for Gilles, an INO and a Judge, where on the other side, I think it's just going to be pure make it happen. Yeah, there is one INO as well, but yeah, very little disruption. That could be quite important at the end, because Roaring Moon is a deck that can be disrupted if it's not quite ready for it. So something to think about.
And here we go, first Pokestop of the game.
Solid.
2 items and an INO. INO goes to the discard pile, and just as Pokestop says, the other 2 items go to hand.
Okay, but they're going to be discarded off the Squawk and Seas, or has that already happened? I might have missed that.
And there we go, attaching the ancient, I always forget the word, ancient booster energy capsule. No,
there's an energy in there.
Yeah, it's ancient booster energy capsule. It's quite a difficult one, isn't it?
A
mouthful. And there we go.
There we go.
Energy, so much darkness energy in the discard pile for a first turn. It's a good and a bad thing for Roaring Moon. It can be really helpful, but you can overdo it. But 3 Dark Patch in hand, I'm going to say that's pretty helpful.
Definitely a good thing at that point, right? Want to get as many energy in play early on. You want to set up a stable board state. I'm not going to be doing anything more than that. And one of the big keys in this matchup is actually just leaving a 1-prizer in the active until you're ready to go, because it's all well and good getting the combo piece off to get an attacker, but if you don't get the escape rope and you use a Professor Silas Vitality, a lot of your ways to get the single prizer out of the active just aren't available. So yeah, the leaving Greninja in the active is such a key start to the game.
Absolutely, and we move on to David's turn, starting with a very strong Battle VIP pass, access to a full moon of Roaring Moon from their deck, unlike Gilles there. So They're just going to have a little check and see what the best course of action to begin with. And yep, they're going for Squawkabilly and Roaring Moon. The nice thing about Mew EX is it does have free retreat. So if David does get a Roaring Moon set up on the bench, they will be able to attack this turn. However, they're ideally going to want to be looking at KOing that Roaring Moon that's very well set up on the bench.
Yeah, having the Radiant Greninja in the prizes is such a prime single prize you'd love to leave in the active. So actually, it's a bigger problem than you might realize, just because you can't access. Firstly, it's helping the consistency with the concealed cards.
Oh no, a boss's order to the discard pile. That could have been one of the conditions that David would need this turn to make an effective attack. Prize mapping in this kind of mirror match is going to be essential to success. Prize mapping correctly and making sure that you're taking meaningful KOs is going to make the difference.
So Galarian Moltres taken out of the deck will allow to get some energy from the discard back into play, and we see just the one Darkness Energy there, and does have a Dark Patch too, so might opt to use that before the Squawking Seas. Might even use the Research here to dig deep. So we'll see the Dark Patch to kick things off.
Yeah, going to go straight onto the Galarian Moltres, which has the fantastic ability to drag lots of energy back onto the field. Straight in with an energy switch onto Roaring Moon, and restart from Mew to draw up to 3 cards. So 2 more on top of that Professor's Research.
Okay, just going to research that energy away. So still available to use the Galarian Moltres to try and get that energy into play.
But unfortunately, now the supporter has been played. There will be no boss's orders. So it looks like Greninja might be the only choice of target as of right this second.
Or might have to try and get a one prizer and play themselves and just hope that it can sit there a turn and that it's hard for Gilles on the other side. But no, just setting up a rigid board state is key. Like you mentioned, you do have access on David's side to that Greninja attack if it's able to come off the prizes later on. So there is a way to knock out. But it's not just the Greninja that's prized. There is a water energy as well. And only playing 2 water energy, that's 2 of the 3 pieces you need to make that possible.
Also taking kind of KOs or dealing damage with the second attack on our Roaring Moon could be incredibly kind of dangerous in this game. Using Calamity Storm does 100 damage, and you may discard a stadium in play. If you do, the attack will do 120 more. Now, there are limited stadiums in play, and both players have access to that attack. So if we're thinking about the amount of Calamity Storms we can use in a game, and both players are trying, that could be a bit sketchy.
Yeah, I mean, at this stage as well, for David, it might even be thinking about knocking out his Greninja just to disrupt the board state for Gilles, because there's not a huge amount got developed last turn. The hand looks quite small. So if you do use the Calamitous Storm, you're going to be taking away one of the main outs for Gilles. So it could just be accepting that you might get knocked out here.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually, because they could remove the Pokestop in the process as well. So taking away card draw from the Greninja's concealed cards, but also taking away the card draw from...
Opting for the leave the one prizer approach. We said that could be an option there.
Yeah, absolutely. There were a lot of options, to be totally fair. Going over to Gilles' turn with a Trekking Shoes and benching their own Mew EX.
Okay. So we got that Dark Patch in the hand from last turn. Oh, the boss's orders is huge here.
That's lovely. And yeah, so we're going to see a huge KO as our first KO of the game. Unfortunately, David didn't make a meaningful attack, which is the problem. Going second is all well and good if you can make a meaningful attack.
Oh, this is a clunky hand. Getting rid of the Roaring Moon there too is quite bad, because as we know, the other 2 are in the prizes. So that hand has 2 Battle VIP Pass in it, a Dark Patch that can't be used, a Pokestop which is not able to bump a Pokestop. So that hand is not going to be very useful when trying to restart with the Mew.
Oh, so they went for the Frenzied Gouging, putting 200 damage on their own Pokemon. Very risky, especially at this stage, but clearly They were wanting to kind of set the pace of the game and say, I am here and you should be afraid.
I mean, with no next attacker set up, I think David will feel quite comfortable here if they can just get the return knockout, which is much more possible with that Galarian Moltres available, because it does guarantee at least one energy into play, where for Gilles, if a knockout does come through, there's not much left on board to be able to set up the next attack.
No, that is so awfully true. A 2 energy switch have been used already, so it may be that kind of Moltres is the attacking force here, which may not benefit David late game in getting more energy onto the board. So it's a difficult choice.
Okay, just going to use that energy switch there.
Oh, that's 3.
1 attachment.
Oh.
So this is going to be a restart to try and find that Professor Sada Vitality.
For 2, we got a Pokestop still, and we can
there
use
it is.
Did he get it?
Oh, there it is.
Beautiful work, like a masterclass. Here we go. There we are. Attach 2 energy to your ancient Pokemon from your discard pile, and draw 3 cards.
That was the dream.
Oh, and I think they got
The
Forest
dream of the
Sealstone off
restart.
that as well.
Oh my goodness, everything coming together now. It always looks like these kinds of turbo decks are out of it, but they draw so many cards in a turn. All it takes is hitting that next thing that draws you more cards.
You know what? I forgot we hadn't even used Pokestop yet. Pokestop till you drop. Let's see all item cards is coming up, David.
David feeling good right now. Got that energy switch as well for next turn to try and get the next Roaring Moon powered up. But the return knockout here, not only will it knock out the Roaring Moon, but it will get rid of that stadium potentially, which you can see. It will actually be a town store now.
Town store does benefit both players, so maybe a bit of a risky one unless you're going to use Calamitous Storm. So yeah, maybe a different game plan here. Calamity Storm could help to kind of remove that before Gilles can use it. Just something to bear in mind, because obviously this current active Roaring Moon is damaged enough for it.
We just saw there for David getting the Vitality Band off of the town store, which is great for the mirror here. We mentioned how using the 220 damage doesn't work against a Roaring Moon. You know, using Frenzy Gouging would have to be the way to do it, but Calamitous Storm will be an option when you've got the Vitality Band to be able to knock out an opposing Roaring Moon. As long as they don't have that Ancient Booster Energy Capsule on, then it would be a way to get through. So Vitality Band almost acting as a mirror tech here, also good for Iron Hands and of course things like Dragonite. There's a lot of really good Pokemon in the format right now that have 230 hit points.
Honestly, it's surprising how much difference 10 damage can make, but sometimes that's just the mathematics of the situation, and that 10 damage means everything. And in this instance, it absolutely is. You're so right, and I'm excited to see how it pans out and how exactly kind of David has respected the mirror match.
I wonder, there's another scenario where it might get used on the Galarian Moltres to turn it from 190 to 200, which can be quite useful too.
Good in Miraidon matchups.
Yeah, good against Snorlax when they've got Bravery Charm too. So very clever little addition there. The Vitality Band from David, obviously working to great success to be 9-1-3 here at Liverpool, but it could be useful in this late stage. Round 14 could come in and be the hero needed next turn.
But bringing it back to Gilles' turn, they've gone ahead and Ultra Balled away those Battle VIP Pass. Definitely don't need them anymore for their own Galarian Moltres. Oh, there it is. Galarian Moltres V back onto the bench, and another Roaring Moon, Dark Patch, and straight onto the Roaring Moon. And this is the beauty of Roaring Moon, really. At the start of their turn, they had 0 attackers set up, but it can just jump out of the flames and continue trudging.
Don't know how much energy is left in deck. You mentioned earlier on how it's a great thing to get all that energy in the discard because you have all the Dark Patch, Professor Sada's Vitality, but at this stage getting energy could be quite useful as it'll increase your draw through those concealed cards, which there is 2 still left in deck, so leaving those available for this stage, very smart, and it will also improve the quality of the Pokestop this turn.
Yeah, those are the final 2 energy in the deck. I kind of see that as a catch-22 personally. I know I can't search for any more energy, but it makes my Pokestops better.
Yeah. We'll see what happens here off of this concealed cards. Similar scenario to what we saw with David, really looking to find that Professor Sada's Vitality just to get a little bit more energy into play. There are other options too. Dark Patch, most of them are gone though. Forest Seal Stone might get it. And we'll just see with the emergency jelly here whether you go for the Forest Seal Stone first or do you go for the Pokestop. What's going to be the plan here?
Yeah, there's a lot of different options. Again, the emergency jelly is really nice just to be able to heal off some damage so that kind of you just can't get nudged by a single prizer for the knockout. Kind of takes away that possible Greninja play and maybe even takes you out of range of a Morpeko.
Oh, interesting. Might be thinking of going for the research here just to get more cards for next turn, because there was 3 energy switch in there, and with both the Galarian Moltres V on the bench, all that would be needed is an energy switch of sort at this stage. But of course, this matchup is all about who takes that first knockout to be able to set the pace. If you can continue to keep taking 2 prizes, you just win. But at some point, it might get too much for Gilles here to continue that 2-2-2 journey, and at that point, David would then return to being in the lead.
Yeah, I do like the pick of Professor Sada's Vitality here, though, with all of that energy in the discard pile. Just being able to guarantee put 2 of them on, well, up to 2, I should say. They've opted for 1 in this instance, and draw 3. Honestly, I'm super happy with that. Yeah,
you'll take that, and then you still get to use the Galarian Moltres V, and you get 3 more cards. You get plenty of draw off the back of it, so that Roaring Moon is ready to take a knockout here. And as we mentioned, no Vitality ban for Gilles, just for David, so it will have to be a Frenzy Gouging here for the knockout.
I really like that David's kept it secret as well.
Well, he did get it off the town store, so I don't know if it was secret.
Oh, that's very true, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was off the town store anyway.
Yeah, no, you're right, it was. And then, yeah, it's just because it went out of play so quickly, because Roaring Moon said, no, thank you. But the emergency jelly does activate, healing 120 damage, isn't it? Or is it 130?
It's 120,
120
I believe, yeah.
damage, there we go. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, you can see 80 damage on that Roaring Moon. Does 200 damage to itself. Emergency jelly healing a little bit there, and setting up that Roaring Moon to be out of range of something like the Greninja attack we spoke about earlier, but will not be out of range of a Roaring Moon looking to swing and get a knockout. So Gilles now going to be down to 2 prize cards remaining, and this is the crunch time. Can David do something this turn that makes it impossible for Gilles to get a 2 prize knockout next turn, because that's all they can do at this stage?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. Can they? Can they make that happen? I think that's the issue. Like,
a lot to ask. Still got the Forest Seal. You know, got the energy pretty much now. They know how to get a knockout this turn, but the next question is, can they get the disruption off? Because it's all well and good getting this knockout, but if a return one just comes next turn, then it's next to pointless. So the Iono and the Sada's Vitality going back in, and obviously can get that Iono off of the Forest Seal if needed, but we'll hope to draw into it naturally.
I tell you what my concern is, that I think David's in a position where all he might be able to do would be to force a sudden death.
Potentially. That is a very fair point.
If he takes a knockout here, then both of them will be on 2 prize cards, but then if they manage to set up a situation where... Oh, no, I suppose they can't.
This first knockout will definitely be a Calamitous Storm, so that Roaring Moon will remain healthy.
Yeah, that's true.
And would only be at a knockout from that Mew-EX or a following Roaring Moon, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot to do to get that to that stage. So Gilles, most likely outcome would be setting up a Galarian Moltres V, which wouldn't be enough at that stage and would need a Gust with that.
But then Mew would knock itself out in the process.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a bit sketchy.
It is the Iono that's going to have to be the key here. Will it stick? Gilles has 2 prize cards remaining, I believe. So we'll just get 2 cards off the Iono.
Yeah, it's one of those situations. The pressure is building as we head towards...
Oh, there it is. The Iono's gone down.
As we head towards the end of this game 1 of round 14.
There we go, offering the cut. Those 2 cards, what will they be for Gilles? We'll have that Heyndrickx to help draw a little bit more, but the stadium will be gone.
Oh, Moltres wanted in some of the Pokestop action there. There we go, 2 cards into hand. Another Dark Patch. Ending up on Galarian Moltres, understandable. It's another valid attacker in this deck. 190 damage is nothing to frown at.
Yeah, this is what we said about this matchup. Is it is literally who can take all of their knockouts back to back to back, and if the other person takes it first, you have to have a way to get back into it. And right there, that knockout has happened. Luminion and Radiant Greninja will be great to get off the prizes there for David to help facilitate that final attack. But for Gilles, is it possible now?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure it's possible.
Pokestop gone. Yeah, I was going to say, didn't want to leave that into play. And we see 3 cards here.
Okay, let's have a look. It looks like a Morpeko.
Oh my, that's not what you want to see.
Energy switch, is that?
Yeah, I think it's literally going to be thin the hand down, switch energy to the Heyndrickx.
And then restart?
Is this going to be to force?
Oh my gosh.
My goodness.
Well, there's a Judge and a Pokestop, so there's still card draw potential.
How do you get the other 2 energy onto the Mew? Because
I just don't know, because you can only attach 1 per turn, and then you'd maybe need a Moltres and Energy Switch combo again.
Yeah, that's going to be tough to do, especially off of 4 cards in the Judge, and then you got the Pokestop, which could help you get the Energy Switch, but could also get rid of the energy that's available to attach.
Oh, I'm not sure how I'd structure this turn, honestly.
I mean, it's
there's so much pressure.
It's reaching right now.
Oh, 2 Energy Switch.
That could be it, because there's 2 Galarian Moltres Vs in play, right?
Yeah. So, but that again, that would force.
Oh my.
Oh.
Okay, there is the energy switch there.
That would force a sudden death.
It would, and for those of you who don't know, if by taking a knockout on your opponent's Pokemon and you knock yourself out that turn so that you both end up with 0 prize cards remaining, you go into a sudden death. And how does a sudden death work, Amy?
So you restart your game entirely. It's kind of a mini game between your best of 3. So you would still do a dice roll to decide who's going to go first and who to go second. So a coin flip, essentially. And then you still set out 6 prize cards. However, the first person to take a KO is the winner of that first game. And then you move on to game 2, same as usual. Whoever didn't win will get to choose whether they go first or second.
So because you can only use 1 Dire Flame Wing per turn, they were not able to get those final energy onto the Mew, so had to retreat into the Morpeko and just put 70 damage preparing for the Galarian Moltres next turn and hoping that David wouldn't be able to find a way to go around the Morpeko. So in the end found a way to avoid that overtime and the sudden death.
Fitting in a sudden death into a 50-minute best of 3 match is difficult, I tell you that. I had the same situation at a cup a few weeks ago where in game 1 we went to sudden death and it was so difficult to consider whether it was even worth it.
Yeah, we've got the Galarian Moltres ready for next turn. That will be able to get the final energy needed with the Dire Flame Wing, so it is ready to get the knockout next turn in theory. So without a Gust option for David, no boss's orders, and this will be... So, Luminion Energy Escape Rope. So the Escape Rope would get you around the Morpeko, but there's another single prizer there. We've just got to see whether it will go down to that tiebreaker match. It seems like it won't at this stage. I mean, it really will be down to if Gilles has to get the knockout with a Mew, which is not going to happen. So this game looks to be going the natural way. There will be 6 prize cards taken by 1 player, but not the other. So Gilles just hoping no way around this Morpeko now. David trying to find an option.
Yeah, it is a tough match. Honestly, it's coming down to the wire. And a lot of time has ticked by while all of this has been going on as well.
Do you remember at the start when we said if you leave a 1 prizer in the active, it can give you a bit of time, and then there suddenly was that boss's orders that went around it? Well, let's remember how that works. We're back to it. just leaving one prizes in the active. Who's going to take the bait? Who's going to be the first one to take the one prize knockout just to lose the game the next turn? So it seems to be David has just left a Morpeko in the active and said, can you get around it? I've seen a boss. Can you get around this one?
That's the thing. But both players have done it, right?
Yep.
Both players have been like, okay, well, you can't win if I leave this in the active and you don't have a boss. So it's a very funny situation because both players are kind of waiting to see who's going to take that first aggressive stance.
Oh, wow. Seems to be digging for it here. My goodness.
Have they got no cards left in deck?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh.
I think they were just out of cards there and they accepted that that was the way to do it, right?
Yeah. I mean, wait, but David's looking through the discard pile?
Does David...
David?
Does David realise?
I don't know. Maybe the deck's out of shot. Maybe we can't see it.
Maybe that's the case here. But it seemed like they just... they decked themselves out knowing that they couldn't win this game because they could ultimately both just leave one prize in the active until one of them decked out, right? And
yeah.
And that's it there. They're scooping it all up and we're going into the next game. So
there we go.
David the winner.
It was so close. That was so scary.
Yeah, I think Gilles, just with a bit of sense of humour there, realising they couldn't win, decided to just deck themselves out to finish the game.
A very unusual win condition.
Yeah. I mean, by leaving the one prize in the active, they kind of checkmated each other of like, whoever knocks out first will lose the game. And so the only way you could get around that would be to hope the other person has less cards in deck and deck out. And on this occasion, David had more cards remaining.
Yeah, very unusual. I don't think I've ever seen a Roaring Moon run out of cards in their deck as the win condition.
Yeah, well, on this occasion, leaving the one prize in the active is such a powerful tool for Roaring Moon to be able to pull off, and we saw it early on was the strategy. As soon as that first knockout was triggered, it then couldn't be done until right at the end there where they went back to the can you knock out my one prizer strategy.
Yeah, and again, that's why prize mapping is so important in this particular mirror match.
100%, and typically you want 2-2-2.
Yeah, but not in this instance, not if you have enough single prize Pokemon that you can use them as a method of disruption.
Well, we got to see a few of the important cards in this matchup. That Vitality Band, definitely something to bear in mind. David coming with the 10 damage modifier that allows you to get a potential knockout on a opposing Roaring Moon without doing damage to yourself, which could be huge. And also, we mentioned that Greninja.
Yeah.
Greninja could take out a Morpeko as well as a Roaring Moon, so you're not stuck in that situation we just saw there where you can't take out a one prizer.
That's the thing, Greninja can be incredibly powerful, and David has that water energy in their deck to be able to use it. But Gilles also can make use of it via a Mew EX. So either player does have that as an option if they see the timing is right.
Yeah, we said this was going to be an explosive matchup, which of course it is, but it's not quite as explosive as we thought. It's become quite intricate in real terms. And a Luminion start for David, that is not ideal.
No, not at all. Honestly, not great. Not only, I mean, okay, there's two ways I can look at this. David does have water energy. They can use Aqua Return. Not only does that put Luminion back into the deck, but also Luminion, does 120 damage, and that's nothing to shake your tail at in this matchup. So it could be relevant damage, and Luminion can be used later in the game, and the energy's back in the deck.
Could be cheeky, that.
Could. But on the other hand, Luminion's awful to start with. You've got to kind of, I suppose, use up an energy to manually retreat it, but is it a problem? Because if it's a darkness energy, then we can use a dark patch. So there's so many ways to think about this, but I think ultimately it isn't
And is that the pass? That's the pass.
Oh,
so
no.
Gilles has an opportunity here to get a big knockout. And starting off, we see an attachment. And there is a Judge in hand, which might be the only way to reset it and go find other cards. It will be, so going to be using that Judge to try and find a way. So without Professor Sada's Vitality, no energy in the discard. It's going to be pretty tricky off this Judge. But of course, still, a Luminion with an energy attached and 4 fresh cards for David. Not going to be great either.
Gilles going second in this match. I mean, we had exactly this happen earlier, Mike, and I can see it happening again if Gilles gets all of the cards that they need to be able to
Battle
use.
VIP.
Oh my goodness.
That's going to be huge because the Battle VIP can get the Squawkabilly.
Oh, we can see it again, folks. We can see that one-hit KO taking out David's only Luminion. And if so, then we move on to a game 3, especially after game 1 being quite the back and forth. This surprises me.
And this is the greatest asset of Roaring Moon, being able to get those early knockouts. I'm sure there's been plenty of people all throughout Liverpool Regional who've been getting donked by this powerful early game deck. Roaring Moon, probably the strongest deck in the first few turns and the most threatening and the one that you have to worry about the most. But towards the end game can, as we saw, fizzle out a little bit. And that's where both these players will lean into whichever strategy is correct for the game in hand.
And to those who might be new, donk simply means to knock out the only Pokemon in the active spot. So it's usually considered the beginning of the game when this happens to say, oh, I got donked means
Brilliant.
I only had one Pokemon and it got knocked out.
So yeah, just using the Pokestop there before using the Squawkabilly because there's a Dark Patch in hand and actually got a Dark Energy discarded off of that. I think they might have it actually. So if they Earthen Vessel away this, they'll have energy in hand. They got the Dark Patch to get the first energy onto the Roaring Moon. It would just be then, oh no, they need to get an energy switch after the Squawkabilly because the first energy on that Roaring Moon was through a manual attachment. So a lot of options now available going after the Squawkabilly. There's what, 4 energy switch, 3 Dark Patch, all of which would be viable options.
Yeah, they could all make the difference and they could all make this happen. Mew being inactive is rather nice at the moment as well with that free retreat. 2 energy there in the discard pile is rather lovely.
So Squawkabilly to see whether they can get this attack
Here we
off.
go.
There it is, the energy switch.
The energy switch. Oh, they might as well lay down their hand. Here we go. And Roaring Moon must
straight
go forward.
away.
Straight away, Luminion got KO'd. And we have our winner, Lickety Split.
I mean, Gilles getting game 2 there, showing exactly the Roaring Moon start of dreams, getting those knockouts, and there were so many ways to win in those final turns. We even forgot about Forest Sealstone, which would have got anything you absolutely needed. The first card Gilles turned over was one of those options. So Roaring Moon, a slow game to start with, went into that explosive beginning, and now we're going to be going into game 3 where David gets to choose the optimal start.
This really is a full moon masterclass with these both of these players being very prolific in the tech choice and clearly very well practiced, both of them. That first game was incredibly intense, and then Roaring Moon doing what Roaring Moon does best in game 2.
I'm sure David was just sat there as he looked at a Roaring Moon setting up, knocking out his only Pokemon player and went, fair enough, I've been that person all day.
I've done that,
I've been doing that quite a lot, so I know how my opponents now all felt when I did it. So we'll see if a better start happens here for David, and for Gilles, we'll be looking to try and get that early knockout, just as he did in both games.
I hope we have a nice nail-biter of a situation this time. As with game 1, it's always fun to see that back and forth and that struggle between the decks, and then we really do get that masterclass. We get to see how best to play the matchup. We get to theory craft together and you know, take a lot away from this.
Maybe David's lucky Politoed was drawing the water types to the active spot a bit too hard in that last game. Luminion, a support Pokemon you don't want to start with, can be often the worst starter in the decks it appears in, but such an important card in all of the decks it appears in to be utilized later on. Prize cards wise, the Squawkabilly could be the biggest factor there. Maybe the Morpeko for the single prize in the active plan, but we do see a Morpeko and a Roaring Moon to start, and Gilles will begin.
Do you know what? I thought I saw a flash of blue as David turned over their card, and I was thinking, no! But actually, it's Roaring Moon, so it's all good. David is going second, though, so I think that Squawkabilly not being an option is a bit of a shame. But Gilles has started really well with the Morpeko, knowing that, okay, this is a single prize Pokemon. If David knocks it out, that's kind of okay. I'm all right with it.
I think that Morpeko might just sit in the active until Gilles can get a knockout, or until David can gust around it to get a knockout. So very safe sat there right now.
Oh, very much so. Very safe on its own, having a good time. But it might be in a hungry hurry if David forces it out of the active. That's the only thing that could happen, but David obviously isn't wanting to use a boss's orders on their first turn. They're going to want to focus on other supporters that are going to help them get set up with a rigid board state to be able to keep pace with Gilles.
Just going to be getting that dark energy out, Earthen Vessel, not opting to get too much out. Obviously you get the choice of 2 or 1 basic energy, and sometimes it is just better to only get a little bit out, because obviously drawing into it will allow you to draw more with the concealed cards later on. You mentioned last game you really want to get as much in the discard pile, but not too much. No,
not at all, and unfortunately that was really the cincher there, running out of cards in deck. And I called it at the start of the game, you know, that's a lovely amount of energy to have in there, but also a little bit scary.
Thinning is winning, as they say, but so is your opponent decking out. That is also a winning situation.
Yeah, maybe they thinned too much, thinned too close to the sun, that one.
Yeah, Battle VIP pass on the other side of that Squawkabilly will be dreamy for Gilles as they look to try and set up that rigid board state we mentioned before. You just want to be chaining 2 prize attackers here, so if you can get as much energy on as many Roaring Moons and Glaring Moltres early on as possible, then you will be comfortable throughout the rest of the game.
And I really like those Professor's Research. They're the Professor Willow promo cards from Pokemon Go.
Yeah, with the code on them.
Yeah, that's so cool.
I'm sure the code has been used. if you're zooming in, I'm sure it's been used. If not, fair play, Gilles. Just giving out free codes.
Give out some free codes. If you're a Pokemon Go player catching the stream, very best of luck. Oh, yeah, no, that board state's looking fantastic. Exactly what I'd expect from a turn 1 Roaring Moon. We've got our Galarian Moltres, Greninja, Roaring Moon, and Squawkabilly. I really couldn't hope for anything better.
And does have the trekking shoes to carry on the dig. And as you mentioned, those Professor's Research will be a great way to start next turn. Given enough energy is in play, otherwise you'd be looking for those Professor Sada's Vitality more so.
It's been a lovely turn to set up. Absolutely perfect. Going to be Professor's Researching essentially nothing away. Just another Professor's Research. But over to David's turn, getting that Greninja down as well. I imagine we're going to see a copycat of, not the card, but of the board state.
You can see a few different supporters there. Research, and Ino, and Professor Sada's Vitality. Ideally, you'd want to use that Professor Sada's Vitality at some point, but it might not be possible this side of the Research. Oh, it is just all going to be going.
Yep, no, I think that's a really valid choice. I think sometimes you can spend too much time focusing on almost the wrong strategy and the wrong supporter, and there's a lot of card draw to be had here if David does it right. And I think sequencing this turn is so crucial for David to attempt to just pull forward in this match, unlike game 1.
Yeah, it looks like it's probably going to be a Roaring Moon and a Galarian Moltres V, but does have a Roaring Moon in hand, so it doesn't actually need to get that down. But the only other basic Pokemon, I believe, was a Luminion, so not much use for that. As we mentioned earlier, the Morpeko is in the prize cards, as well as the Squawkabilly, so those 2 really important choices here if the Battle VIP Pass are not available.
Again, it could be quite telling if they don't go for the Squawkabilly here, which they can't.
100%.
You know, which does make the turn a lot less powerful. Squawkabilly is incredibly crucial to these decks to start gaining energy in the discard pile, just getting that consistently through. I think that's the only thing that Roaring Moon struggled with in the early days of deck building. So a lot of people were finding that it just wasn't hitting what they needed to on the right turns, like the pacing wasn't quite right. And the extra card draw on your first turn from that Squawkabilly made a huge difference. And now I think it's an essential part of the Roaring Moon core build.
I've seen some with 2 in because it's so important.
Yeah.
You know, it's such a vital card early on, and we can see this game might be an example of why. But of course, no Squawkabilly in play, no liabilities that potentially might be easier to knock out. So that's definitely a potential benefit. Pokestop getting an Earthen Vessel, and at this stage, energy is required, so could be useful. But it does look like a first turn attack might be a bit tricky here.
I think it may be a bit too much to ask for. I think if David were to go for a first turn attack, not only would they only be taking out a single prize Pokemon, but they would also be spending a lot of resources to do so, and I'm not sure it's worth it.
Yeah, and two darkness energy on both sides in the prize cards, so limited access to the energy for both Gilles and David. Should be fine, given that a lot of the energy will just be recycled through Dark Patch and Professor Sada's Vitality. Will be a slower turn here. Can David find a way to get a single prize in the active as well? That is another big part of this turn. If that's possible, then we might see a slow start. If not, Gilles might come in aggressively next turn and start that prize race.
I think my worry for David is that if Greninja ends up in the active spot, that takes away some card draw.
Could do. Especially if there's no attacker ready to come, then they might just knock out the Radiant Greninja.
Indeed, and that's something I'd worry about. Greninja is quite important to this deck. Again, it needs heavy card draw to be consistent. That's what Roaring Moon relies on. Yes, Roaring Moon itself is aggressive, but it relies on so many different cards to move the energy around to get to it. It's like a little conveyor belt. It needs its friends and it needs these pieces of machinery in a perfect order in order to get the energy to itself in time.
Mew going down. Potentially some extra draw there. We'll attach the water energy to the active. Ooh, not the ideal ending, but we'll just be getting a restart here. Try and find a way to protect that Roaring Moon. Energy switch to the active is going to have to just retreat, but all that energy out of play just shows you how important it is to leave a one prizer in the active in these early turns.
Yep, and again, it's just the way the mirror's played, isn't it? It's, okay, I need to make progress. Okay, I can't, so I guess I'll try and stop my opponent from making progress instead. And it almost feels like who's going to break first, like a game of chicken. Like
100%.
Who's going to take the first prize card? Oh, not me. Okay, I'm going to try and make it be you then, but I don't want you taking a multi-prize Pokemon. So here's a Morpeko or a Greninja. Do your worst.
So Gilles got 2 boss's orders. Won't be able to use it this turn with the Professor's research going, but there is access to Gust there that could be very useful later on. For now, we'll probably just try and get as much energy in play ready to power up, because no energy in play right now for David really puts the pace on him to try and keep up with Gilles.
Yeah, massively, and that's the issue. They got a really small hand. Gilles knows this, and no energy. If they do take out this Radiant Greninja, that kind of puts a bit of a strangle on David's resources and being able to not only discard energy for those dark patches and Professor Sada's Vitality, but also not being able to draw cards from concealed cards, leaving just Mew with restart. It's just not ideal.
As you mentioned, 2 boss's orders for Gilles and a Pal Pad, so could in theory use 4 through a game. The 1 Pal Pad for David will only be able to get back a oh no, there's 2 boss's orders on both sides. Ignore me. I think there was 1 prize last game, so I put it down to 1. But yeah, the 2 boss's orders on either side and the 1 Pal Pad, that's going to be the key in this matchup, because leaving a 1 prize in the active only takes you so far.
Yeah, exactly. And as we know, David only has 1 available. Okay, here we are. Building up that energy once again, the conveyor belt itself working like a charm. Moltres bringing energy into play, energy switching it over to the Pokemon you actually want it on. Escape rope forcing David to bring forward a multi-prize Pokemon. Ouch.
It's going to be a Roaring Moon, forcing it to have to be a Frenzied Gouging. Very smart there, putting the Roaring Moon forward. We'll be able to get the attack off here, but for David, he's going to have to try and find a way around that now by taking the knockout with something like maybe the Greninja, because the self-knockout aspect of Roaring Moon, or self-damaging aspect of Roaring Moon, the emergency jelly will take it out of range.
That is lovely. We like to see that jelly in an emergency. It certainly does come in handy.
A card I didn't think we'd see return since Articuno has lost favour in the format.
Yeah, I mean, it was used in God of War for a little while.
I think a lot of people didn't like it, did they?
I liked the jelly.
You liked it? You're a jelly fan?
I liked the jelly. I was a big jelly fan.
Oh, maybe you're a Roaring Moon fan now. Perhaps you should get back on the jelly hype.
Maybe. It is my caster pick.
What, jelly?
No, Roaring Moon.
I was going to say. that would be bold if you went emergency jelly.
You know what? Should have done it. Should have done it next time.
I would have respected that.
But Roaring Moon was, and the jelly is part of Roaring Moon package in a lot of decks nowadays.
Well, no energy on board for David. Free retreater in the active.
I think it's a Professor's Research in hand, but it's not going to help that acceleration, which isn't great. Going for the town store, seeing what resources they've got left, but also searching for a tool card.
For a Sealstone, perhaps?
I'm not sure I saw one, I'm going to be real.
Wait, did that get discarded earlier, maybe? I'm not sure.
Going to have to go for the Ancient Booster Energy Capsule this term.
There is just the one in the deck, so maybe it did get discarded earlier off of the Pokestop?
Yeah.
Or is it in hand already?
Oh, there's a boss in hand.
You need a powered-up attacker. Boss's
and
orders.
A research and, a Pokestop. Okay, you can use Town Store and Pokestop, but restart first for one card. It was a Battle VIP pass, and just choosing to go for the research there.
Yeah, we mentioned how important Boss's orders is, but it's no use if you don't have an attacker ready to knock out. And at this stage, Gilles is just leaving attackers in the active saying, well, I'm faster than you right now. I've got the tempo.
Oh, yeah, and that tempo is relatively unbreakable. I'm not sure I can see David coming back from this, but you know what? I'm not the Roaring Moon Master. These guys are, so let's wait and see.
Well, we'll have the attack off here, it seems. Has the 2 Dark Patch in hand, has the Earthen Vessel, so we'll definitely be able to get an attack off. I believe there's enough Dark Energy in the discard, along with the concealed cards to make it happen, so it's just whether at some point David can get back in the lead, because at the moment he's going to be trailing, taking those 2 prizes 1 turn too late.
I think the emergency jelly helped a lot here, because looking at David's possible plays, the Greninja would have been really nice for the Morpeko and the Roaring Moon, but again, that emergency jelly just has come in at the perfect time, and that's what I keep saying, and I'll keep saying it again over this weekend, is that at the moment, more than any other time in the meta that I've known, timing of your cards is crucial, with a lot of counterbalance cards like Iono and Roxanne, and then again with these one-offs in decks like Emergency Jelly.
What attackers are available? It's only the Luminion, actually. I think a Roaring Moon was discarded early on. There's a Roaring Moon in the prizes, and one was knocked out earlier, one in play. So yeah, Roaring Moon not available. So this is just so the Pokestop doesn't get rid of the Luminion.
There's a lot of prizes left to be taken yet in this game. Things can turn around, but it's looking pretty shady.
I mean, if David can come back from this, it would be an impressive showing, that's for sure. And did get that PAL pad, so we'll be able to get some disruption, some Boss's orders back into the deck if needed.
Honestly, I feel like Roaring Moon's one of the decks that can do it, though, if any. Just with the sheer aggression and speed, after that Professor's Research, David's hand was much nicer. And they've been able, there we go, 3 energy on board already. There's not a lot, 4 energy on board already. There's not a lot of decks that can do that and just go, oh, I don't have any. Well, here we go. Like, it just doesn't happen unless you've got like a Baxcalibur. That's kind of the only other deck I can think of right now that actually gets the energy on board this fast.
Yeah, I mean, the research, the Pokestop, the concealed cards, the restart from the Muse. So many ways to get it done, but a knockout here for David. Now sends it back to Gilles. This tennis match is fast and aggressive. Will Gilles be able to respond with a smash, or will it just be a slower turn? We saw the 1 prize leaving on the active is a strategy towards the end of the game, but at this stage, Gilles wants to use his advantage and keep taking knockouts.
Yeah, Gilles has set the pace of the game high. I'm actually really impressed with David's turn there, bringing it back to even up the prize race. But Gilles does still have the advantage with a much more fleshed out board state.
There seems to be a Dark Patch Professor Sala's Vitality there. So we'll be able to get 2 energy onto the Roaring Moon. It would then just be whether the energy switch could happen. There is a Pokestop to try and find some of those much needed item cards.
Yeah, again, Pokestop can benefit your opponent, especially in this matchup more than others. Not only can David use the Pokestop as well, but they can use it to increase their attack power. So I think they'll only really play the Pokestop if they need it. Interesting.
Going to be setting up. Oh, very clever. Going to be using the Galarian Moltres here.
I love this.
Get rid of the Mew. Much easier attacker to set up.
And yeah, Aura Burn will actually do double damage to this Mew, so it is quite the attack. And I think, yeah, Gilles feels much less in danger at this stage. So gone for the Pokestop, getting more energy on the board, ready for next turn, going for that Pokestop, and we hit one.
Just that switch cart, yeah.
Switch cart's not bad though, I quite like that. Although they do have 2 free retreaters already.
Well, so off the prize cards, Gilles is actually going to be taking a Dark Energy there. A Dark Energy and an Earthen Vessel. So if no hand disruption comes through here, they do have the win next turn with the Roaring Moon. 1 energy already attached will just be a Professor Sada's Vitality and a Dark Energy away from the knockout.
Dark type of days looks like might be knocking on David's door here.
Just trying to work out what to promote at this stage. You know, could get the return knockout, but needs it with some disruption. We did see the Iono in the discard, and I think there's a Pal Pad in the hand for David. So might need to get that into play.
Here comes more Peko after clearly eating too much and getting a bit food comatose into the prize cards there for a rest that David certainly didn't want it to have.
I mean, the other option here is to just aim to knock out the Roaring Moon rather than worrying about knocking out the Galarian Moltres, because Galarian Moltres can't knock out any of the 2 prizes, but now the Luminion's in play, it will have to be an Iono. So this is why that Luminion was so valuable in the deck. We mentioned in the active spot, not very useful, but when it's in your hand, it can be a great way to get exactly what you need at the right moment.
Absolutely, and like you say, the Iono is really valuable here, putting David to 4 cards in hand, but Gilles will only have 2. And will it be enough disruption?
I mean, with that Mew, there is a little bit of support there. The Mew can help you draw.
And possible Greninja if there's enough energy, and Pokestop unless David removes it.
Yeah, I expect to see...
Oh my gosh, Ultra Balling. Is that an Ultra Ball? Oh no, it was the Pokestop. So a boss and a Professor Sada's Vitality straight into the discard pile again. Boss in hand though, because that one of those boss's orders was brought back from the Pal Pad. The Pal Pad, yeah.
So David access to both of them now. You know, early on we saw the boss's orders and the Iono go into the discard, and we were worried for them because we thought, you know, that's taken away access to 2 of your most important supporters in the game. No. They were brought back with Pal Pad, and they are now available in the final turns. Can Gilles make it happen? Oh my goodness. Gilles has a handful of supporters. Oh my gosh, yeah. I can't see this unfolding well for David, unfortunately. The disruption did not stick. I repeat, it did not stick. I mean, which one do you go for? Do you go for the research? I go for the research. Absolutely. I mean, that's to find the dark patch and an energy attachment, right? And then the Professor Sada's Vitality would just be to find an energy and a dark patch. Oh, the Galarian Moltres as well, so energy switch is active. Oh, there it is, yep. Dark patch, energy available. Roaring Moon will be taking the victory here over another Roaring Moon deck. David just behind in this game, unable to keep up with the pace from Gilles. And Gilles will be going forward in a poised position for top 8 here in Liverpool. An absolutely beautiful display from Roaring Moon. You love to see it. A really tricky mirror match, but both players did their best. Gilles came out on top, and I couldn't be happier to see them gouge their way to victory. In all 3 matches, Gilles took the first knockout, and the first one ended up getting disrupted out of the game. Second game, got that first knockout to win it, as there was only a lone Luminion in play for David. And in that final game, we saw how important that tempo, whilst also setting up future attackers, can be. Roaring Moon is so aggressive as a deck that even against itself, it can't deal with the aggression. It has to find a way to disrupt it out of the game. It can't deal with the pressure, and I think that's the key, is that taking that first knockout, but trying to make sure that it's a 2-prize Pokemon is essential. So that escape rope, beautiful. Poetry in motion. Yeah, that escape rope was the big turn, really, when we look back at it, because it was the same turn that another supporter was playing. I think a research or something was played. So you're thinking, oh, no more boss's orders, so we'll see another turn to settle. And then suddenly, escape rope comes in, and because there was only one single prize Pokemon, because the Morpeko was prized, that meant that escape rope proofing through having a Greninja and a Morpeko in play was not possible. So unfortunate prizes for David a little bit, unfortunate start in game 2, but ultimately Roaring Moon, what a showcase it's putting on here in Liverpool.
A beautiful showcase indeed. The moon is shining upon us as we continue throughout the competition, and I'm sure there will be more Roaring Moon to be seen later, as I imagine this very aggressive deck will continue to calamity storm throughout the competition to the top spot. I could really see, I'm getting quite confident in my caster pick here with Roaring Moon. I think it's a great deck choice for today, and I think that's showing. However, you're quite right, Mike, in saying that it doesn't necessarily deal too well with its own aggression, and it can lose to quite literally itself.
Yeah, I mean, with every mirror match, the outcome tends to be a winning Roaring Moon, losing Roaring Moon. On this occasion, we weren't ever going to that draw.